which is, according to the lore, the weakest character of each of the 7 elements of Genshin Impact. Yeah, the video about the strongest already sounded like a lot of problems, and this one, given the community passion for their favorite characters, is probably a death sentence for me, but in a world like Teyvat, even the weakest of them would probably beat me to a pulp. This is both a complex and interesting topic, because even the non-warrior characters who spend their lives doing different jobs tend to show in their interactions that they know how to properly defend themselves. So I'm very curious to find out if there really are helpless people in Teyvat, and of course I won't include anything about gameplay. I would have to know how to play and do something other than press 2 buttons with Kenish to talk about that. This time, let's start with Cryo and Lila, a young astrologer from Sumeru Academia, known for her dedication and, interestingly, her great potential as a Cryo user. Suffocated by the high expectations of her teachers and overwhelmed by a mountain of papers that never seems to decrease, she saw how, one day, when she woke up, a myriad of stars adorned her blank manuscript. Having suffered greatly under a severe lack of sleep, she closed her eyes for just a second, and the next thing she knew, the blank manuscript was adorned by a constellation of words, a thesis. Lila always looks sleep-deprived, which makes her one of the most relatable characters. Anyone would be nodding off with the dialogue in this game. But regardless of her academic achievements, it's quite clear that she's not the ultimate physical prodigy. Her problem of perpetual sleepiness is caused by her serious insomnia, which compromises her physical and mental health. This not only keeps her exhausted, but also reduces her skill with Cryo, even if she has an innate talent with the element. In a world where endurance and concentration are essential for victory, Lila finds herself trapped in a cycle of fatigue, unable to reach her true potential. Lila's tragic fate lies not only in her fragile body, but also in the silent battle she fights against herself. As if her insomnia wasn't enough, when she finally falls asleep from utter exhaustion, she ends up sleepwalking and engaging in crazy stuff, like wandering the desert barefoot or writing theses of over 100,000 words, leaving her even more tired in the daytime. If at some point she manages to recover from these issues, improve her sleeping habits, and learn to control her hyperactive sleepwalking gremlin alter ego, she could even stand right next to the Tsariza. But until then, due to her difficulties to deal with even the most basic physical tasks, I think there is no doubt that she's one of the most obvious instances in the video. Get a good rest, please. If you don't, soon I will have to upload a video of curious facts about Genshin to put you to sleep. As for Dandro, many of you may have thought of Collei, but this young girl, as a matter of fact, is not actually a bad fighter, because she's used to the hard life of a forest ranger. But unfortunately, her illness, Eleazar, would be physically devastating for her. In the game, we see firsthand how she often has trouble even holding simple objects, performing basic tasks, or simply staying conscious. At times, her illness seems to give her a break, and if she has a good day, she could give a good fight, but that factor could make her arguably the weakest character of them all. Luckily for everyone, Eleazar was eradicated after the cleansing of Greater Larukadebata's tainted consciousness from Irminsul, which caused her symptoms to disappear and gave her a bright future. Some of you even mentioned her in the previous video about the strongest character as the possible most powerful Dandro character. In her childhood, Dottor experimented on sick children children like her, and in one of these experiments, her body was exposed to something called Archon residue, which resulted in Collei acquiring dangerous skills, a destructive power she could not control. There could still be some of that legacy in her, hiding a dreadful latent power. On the other hand, many have probably considered Yao Yao as the weakest, being a 10 years old girl, but please don't even mention her. As Madame Ping, disciple in mystical arts, I really don't think she's someone to be treated as a laughing stock. As much as it pains me to admit it, I think there is no doubt that the weakest Dandro character is Clover, the most talented architect of the Academia who, however, went bankrupt, forcing him to live together with HoYoFair, with whom he has a complicated relationship, and let's hope for his sake that these fights don't go too far, because unlike HoYoFair, the game doesn't say much about Clover having any skills or interest in combat. He has proven to be more of a planner and builder than a warrior, using his wit to solve design and architectural problems rather than engage in battles. In the only cutscene in the game where we see him do something physical, he ends up with an asthma attack from a little bit of running and Scaramouche taking out one of his lungs to sell it to Dory or something. And speaking of hair, Dory is my nominee for Electro. Once again, if we were to accept a more global and flexible idea of power, she certainly would not be here, as she has an unparalleled influence in Sumeru and is always surrounded by a bunch of tough guys, so no one in their right mind would want to bother her. But in terms of combat, she's another character who seems to have no interest whatsoever in getting her hands dirty. Her magic is also not of the offensive type, but rather the kind of stuff that converts people's hopes into purple bills. Even though in certain circumstances she could be useful in a battle with her limited control of Electro, she has lived a fairly comfortable life in the city and never went through any kind of training, which combined with her childlike physique would render her quite helpless. She is the best merchant in Teyvat, but it's clear that she showed up late the day it was her turn to negotiate her usefulness in combat. The element with no one at that level of helplessness at first glance is Pyro. Many will automatically think of Xinyan, as she is totally focused on her dream of being an awesome rocker. And I must confess that I also thought of her at first with my mind totally tainted by her gameplay, forgetting how someone like Tartaglia came to recognize her as a great warrior who impressed him in the Labyrinth's warrior event. And there's also Hu Tao. I'm sure it's a good idea to put her as the weakest so that the community will make me a honorary client of her funeral parlor. She's a quite mysterious character, and with her knowledge of the spiritual arts, I feel that she's a character that hides a much stronger power than we think. We could also consider Xiang Ling, but even though she is mostly dedicated to her gastronomic journey, she is another disciple of Madame Ping and spends her life traveling and facing numerous dangers. With all the pain in my heart, since she is my favorite from Inazuma, I think my choice here would be Yoimiya. Despite her excellent archery skills and her expertise in the use of fire, she displays both talents most often in her true passion, fireworks. As such, her control of pyro is more symbolic and artistic than destructive. Her goal is less about delivering brutal attacks and more about making a show that creates an unforgettable moment that touches people's hearts. If you ask me, that's a wonderful power, but even if she's not helpless, I feel like she's the pyro character whose combat ability is least supported by game dialogues and actions. Moving on to Geo, the first name that popped into my mind was Ningguang, who in my head was another example of unparalleled power and influence that doesn't translate well to the battlefield. Her smarts and schemes are top level role in the game, but at the end of the day, she's a politician who spends her day stuck in her office, signing papers and safeguarded by a huge army of loyal guards. On top of that, her voiceovers clearly confirm that she doesn't like violence. Considering her past as a merchant, I think it's unlikely that she has a lot of experience in head-to-head battles, aside from defending herself against the occasional bandit. Sure, she had an impressive cutscene at the end of Liyue's arc, but you need to remember that all she really did was to activate Gizong Ballista, which was previously assembled in the Jade Chamber. If anything, this could reflect her talent in engineering and her foresight rather than her combat strength, or that's what I thought. However, the cutscene was actually quite blurry in my mind, and when I took a good look at it while working on this video, I had a complete change of heart. The insane speed at which she moves and how she stays levitating while activating the ballista. Call me crazy, but this don't look like the moves of someone helpless, but rather of someone close to the power of an Adeptus. I guess that despite the fact that she doesn't show up, she could be someone much more fearsome than what she seems. But again, it's all just speculation. So I think the most reasonable choice for Geo is Yunjin. In the crowded streets of Liyue, over the chatter of the multitude and the rumbling of the mountains around the harbor, the voice of unparalleled clarity resounds. Yunjin, director and main actress of the Yunhan opera troupe, not only rules over the stage, but also brings to life the stories that encapsulate the heart and soul of her people. Her connection to the Geo element is an echo of the stability she finds in her art. Yunjin is not a fighter. Her life is about harmony and artistic expression, not about the ruthlessness and severity of the battlefield. While other Geo vision holders use their power to crush enemies or build fortresses, Yunjin uses it to create bridges between generations to preserve the spirit of Liyue. Despite her adamant character, Yunjin represents Geo's creative strength, not its force. For Anemo, I could pick Faruzan. In Sumeru's ancient libraries, where time seems to stop amidst scrolls and forgotten artifacts, Faruzan stands out with her exceptional mind, her obsession with unraveling the secrets of ancient technology, as well as the laws that rule over the world, has made her an unparalleled scholar. However, when Faruzan gets lost in calculations and theories, her connection with Anemo doesn't manifest itself as a strong and overwhelming wind, but rather as a breeze that barely scratches the surface of her fate. Faruzan is not a fighter either. Her strength lies in her intellect, where others may use Anemo to unleash storms or rise above the battlefield. She relies on it to experiment, calculate, and explore the mechanical wonders that are so intriguing to her. Sure, she has centuries of experience, but it seems that in all those years she spent more time reading than fighting. But I get her point. If I could enter the Chamber of Spirit and Time, I could also be editing videos and not training. Hydro closes the curtain with a light rain, and Furina dances smoothly under it. An ordinary human in a world of gods. I had to leave her for the end, because if we are talking about weak and defenseless characters, Furina's story is written around that weakness. She, who initially pretended to be Fontaine's Hydro Archon, was actually a normal human just playing this role. Using her charisma and theatrics, she managed to successfully maintain her illusion of divinity while leading the nation, taking advantage of the faith of her people and the complexity of the trials to consolidate her position. However, her true nature was exposed when the crisis of Fontaine showed that her connection to the Gnosis and Hydro authority was only a facade, exposing both her human vulnerability, and the weight of the expectations she was carrying on her shoulders. And that's why, for me, what makes her feat so extraordinary is precisely that she's an ordinary person. Otherwise, had she had exceptional abilities to assist her in this pantomime, the feat of bearing that burden would not have been so breathtaking. Furina's power to play the role of a goddess for centuries is not physical strength, it's the strength of someone who smiles every day as she carries the invisible weight of impossible expectations. It's the strength of someone who gets up every morning to inspire others, to be a role model or a leader in their circle, even when inside that someone feels that they fall short. It's the resilience of pretending to have everything under control while you silently struggle with your own insecurities and limitations, showing that true strength lies not in who you are, but in how you keep going no matter what. She's a unique case in which weakness becomes strength, because if we talk about her spirit, her conviction, and her determination, Furina is perhaps the strongest in all of Teyvat, and she currently has a vision. So given the commitment she has shown, who knows if she may decide to train in the future? We could end up with someone very fearsome on our hands if this happens, but we don't know her plans, so the show must go on.